What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, joined by my guy Morgan, and we are joined by a very special guest, El Capitan himself. Jeremy Reisman is here, gracing us with his presence on a really busy day for him because, as we kind of talked about in our last video, the Lions kicked off OTAs this week, and Jeremy got to be there for Media Day and basically has been up since what? Probably 5, 6 this morning?
I was pretty excited this morning. I'm not gonna lie. The first look at the Lions 2024 team all together. It's an exciting day, even if it's as a lot of people were saying, it's kind of a pajama party out there with no full pads and all that.
But still, again, coming off the season that the Lions just had, any bit of football, at least for me, I know specifically, I couldn't wait for today because I don't care if only 6 guys were out there practicing. I just want to know how those 6 look.
Yeah, no question at all. And so yeah, I had everything kind of laid out last night. Like, all right, I got my notepad. I was gonna bring in the roster sheet, but I don't need to bring in a roster sheet. I made sure I had all my recording equipment. So yeah, it was a big fun day, and I would say mostly lived up to my my expectations and my enjoyment too.
Now, Jeremy, I know I've asked you this probably before, probably on a different YouTube channel in a different format, but how do you kind of go through this first opening process of OTAs? Again, like you're saying, this is the first week of it. There's a lot of guys there. There's a lot of things that players can and can't do. When you're going to these media sessions, what is your overall outlook and what are you trying to kind of accomplish when you're there in person?
Yeah, I think the baseline is particularly on the very first day is just getting a layout of the land. So taking basic attendance, and Dan Campbell helped us out a little bit by literally naming 17 players who are either limited or out or, voluntarily out. But you follow up on that to make sure there weren't any players that he missed, and there actually was a couple in this OTA session, and then you just kind of take a layout of the depth chart. You have your own kind of internal depth chart of what you think it's going to look like, but you never know who's going to change positions. Maybe they have a different order than you do, and you can't tell 100% because there's a lot of rotation happening. But in general, you try to take note of the very first teams that are out there when they take their first 11 on 11s, or even when they're doing positional drills, or when they start practice with a walkthrough. So you kind of take note of who's on what side of the field there. And so to me, that's the most important thing you get on day one, because again, we're not going full speed most of these times. You're not doing full padded practices or anything like that. So let's just see where everyone stands right now. And of course, if a rookie is third string now, that doesn't mean, oh, well, he sucks or he's not going to eventually work his way up. But and in fact, that's how the Lions operate, right? They tend to put their rookies, their young players, down low on the depth chart and work their way up. But that's worth noting. That's worth paying attention to, so that when you get to June and July and they're still down there, you're like, yeah, that's how they operate. We've been tracking it this entire time. So really, day one for me is more setting of the table than it is this guy was awesome, this guy wasn't awesome. You eventually get to that throughout practice, but to me, it's more about setting the table of where everyone stands.
For sure.
Yeah, a little bit of a syllabus day, right?
Exactly.
Just getting everything in order, making sure you got your supplies. But yeah, it checks out. Like we talked about before, it's interesting, but you said you kind of got more from the media days, like the media sessions, which I watched most of them when I got home today. I thought that was really cool because there were some interesting nuggets in there. So first, let's just jump to it. Jamo is about to take off, man, because Dan Campbell doesn't really hand out compliments like that. And I want you to lay it out, Jeremy, but he interrupted the next question by doubling down everything when talking about what Jameson Williams had improved on since April. So
yeah,
what do you think of that?
The beginning of it was he was just asked hey, Jamo improved. How's he looking so far? And he went into this long spiel of all right, well, with the offseason program, it starts with step 1 and we do this, and it start with step 2 and start with step, and then now we're in step 3. And throughout that whole thing, if I had to name one person that has improved most from phase 1 to phase 3, it's Jameson Williams. That dude is a man on a mission, is I think the term he used. And then yeah, a couple questions later, he's asked to follow up. Okay, what has he improved upon? And it almost felt like an avoidance question, he didn't want to say specifically, but I think the overall message there is this guy is a transformed player. And I'm not going to sit here and say oh yeah, I could 100% tell when he was out there on the field, but it was bad last year, guys. I feel like every practice I didn't want to hammer on the guy because he was young and this was his first offseason program and all that stuff, but it was bad. Like, it was clear he did not have the chemistry with Jared Goff. It was clear, and he even admitted it today. It was clear, he didn't value every single step, like all the details, because at Alabama he won however he wanted. Like, in college, there isn't like just that perfection with every route. There isn't the timing that there is in the NFL, and so he wasn't used to that. And that's the stuff he's cleaned up. That's the stuff that looks a lot better this year. Granted, it's one practice. Unfortunately, like we had like the perfect storyline going. You get this awesome quote from Dan Campbell. He's starting to look pretty solid in practice when it comes to all that. He runs this deep route. He's wide open, and he drops it again. Unfortunately, and listen, it was like he was running full speed. It was full extension. It's not the easiest catch to make, but it was a pretty darn good throw. And unfortunately, he drops it. He takes a little bit of a tumble afterwards, but he gets right back up, and he ends up making like a 20-yard catch, a segment or two later. So if he catches that ball, then like we are all in on Jameson Williams, saying like, oh my God, this is it. We knew it. We knew he was going to come along. And again, I'm not going to hammer the guy too much for one drop pass, even if he has kind of this reputation from last year. It looked different. Like, he had trouble tracking the ball last year. It seemed like he was turning the wrong way. His hands were weird to me. Like, again, all that stuff looks improved. It's just unfortunate that it didn't kind of, have that exclamation point with a huge play in training camp today.
And I think, like, again, as Lions fans, like, that's something that everyone's at least going to be even more excited to hear, because Morgan, even you and I talked about it in a video a while ago. Like, Jamo's one of those guys who probably has to take that leap. Like, with Dan saying that, like, hey, he's a man on a mission, like, he better be almost in some respects, because again, he's much more slotted to be wide receiver 2 this year than he probably ever has been in his time here in Detroit, right?
Yeah, for sure. You just look at the depth chart, and like, I mean, Sam Laporta is going to see. That's the thing too. I guess sometimes we have to get out of this thing of just thinking of them as receivers and like just looking at pass catchers as a whole, because Laporta is probably going to get your second amount of targets if we're being honest. But if Jamo's that third and most explosive leg of that, three-headed dragon, however you want to phrase it, I do think the offense could take off to another level. And it was interesting during Jameson's press conference, like his media availability, if you will. He was like talking about, it just seems like he's bought into the process. He said he was like, when I first came in, I was doing, I had my, like, I think he said childish, or like, he didn't say immature. I think he said childish, right?
Yeah. It was, the implication was he was calling himself immature at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if he used those exact words, but yeah, he admitted it.
It was cool, man. Like, you could just tell he's like grown, and yeah, like Antoine Randall, the coaching staff, like probably his veterans watching St. Brown every day, I'm sure has made an impression on him, because we know how he works. So yeah, that was exciting to see, man, because yeah, to your point, Miko, that could be the offense was already elite, right? But like if Jameson is legit, like, and they mentioned like the guys getting the contracts, Sewell, St. Brown, Goff, and they asked Jameson what he thought about that, and he said, "Me next." And I said, "Man, I tell you what," and this thought, popped into my head. If Jameson Williams is in like discussion to get a contract like that this time next year, the Lions won a Super Bowl.
Right.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
The Lions won a Super Bowl, because I was like, can you imagine?
There's just too much untapped talent, right? Like,
yeah, what are you going to do? They're going to score 30 something points a game. That's just how it's going to be. So yeah, that was exciting to me, because, and we're not putting the cart before the horse. I'm just saying it's cool to see Jameson buy into the process. And like you said, if getting that compliment from Campbell's huge, because that man doesn't really hand out like those kind of compliments like that, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, no question. He's not a guy that BS's. So, and it's not like sometimes, the media will ask a question and it's fishing, and he'll have no choice but to like give a compliment, right? Like, and that's what the question was. But Campbell went out of his way to say like, oh yeah, no, we're seeing improvement here. Like, no, this is the most improved player in the past 3 months. Like, that's he didn't have to say that, and he doesn't say that unless he means it.
And then everything times 2.
Right.
He's like, everything. What are you gonna say, Miko?
Well, no, I was going to like kind of pivot to another person that you and I kind of highlighted in another video, Morgan, that we also felt that needed to stand out, which is Carlton Davis III. And obviously, like this secondary has gone through a pretty big change, right? I mean, like, obviously, you're swapping out both corners. You're bringing in some youth. You're bringing in brand new faces. I know you said like you're trying to keep an eye on everything, but did you get some eyes on Carlton Davis, and how did he kind of look in respect to, again, everyone else as that kind of veteran guy out there looking to man that CB1 spot?
Yeah, no. If you're a subscriber to our Pride of Detroit Direct, I actually wrote a lot about Carlton Davis in this edition because he was, to me, the biggest standout in a positive way. To me, he was the guy where I'm like, that is, like you said, like he's a guy that this team is going to have to rely on a lot. And I came away today thinking they might have gotten the guy that they need. Because again, and I'm going back to the pressers because the pressers are always very enlightening. And not that we didn't know this, but it's the Lions have just been saying this all offseason over and over again. We get Aaron Glenn today and he's saying, we're going to be a man coverage team. That's who we are. That's what we want to be. We want to be a press. We want to take it to them. We want to bring blitz, have man coverage behind him. And that's what Carlton Davis does best. I know you look at the PFF scores last year and you're like, I don't know, he wasn't that good. Played a lot of zone in Tampa. Played a lot of zone in Tampa.
Yeah, we kind of broke that down in the film study, right? Like they put him in a lot of off cover 3 zone, and that's just what happens. Yeah, that's what happens when you play that type of coverage. You're going to get opposing offenses are going to eat up that extra cushion that you're giving.
Yep,
gladly. It's free yardage.
And to me, like what one play really sticks out to my mind from today, and it's a regular old flat pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Carlton Davis was all over it, knocked it away, and that to me is just like that's what this defense wants to be. Is we're not even going to give up the small stuff, and that's something that Aaron Glenn said again today. Is like we don't want to let teams dink and dunk their way down the field. That's not how we're going to lose. We're not going to let teams do that to us, and really, that's something that has eaten away at the Lions for years. And I know if we think back to late last year, it was all the big plays they were giving up. And listen, you're going to have to get better at stuff like that too. But to me, this team is going to play so aggressively on defense in a way that we really only saw flashes of towards the end of last season. And part of the reason is because you have guys like Carlton Davis who are going to be so sticky in those first 5 to 10 yards. And that to me is really, really exciting because that opens up so many more possibilities when you're having to make a quarterback hold on to the ball a little bit longer while you're simultaneously going to be aggressive. Because last year we saw the aggression, right? Towards the end of the season, we saw Brian Branch blitzing a lot. We saw Fatu Melifanu blitzing a lot. Problem was coverage wasn't holding up. Well, now you fixed that part. And so what happens when you combine those two things together? Disruption, right?
Sacks, turnovers,
interceptions, forced fumbles, all that sort of stuff. And to me, Carlton Davis, early on, again, like I'm gonna preface everything with it's early. I'm not gonna overreact, but to me, Carlton Davis was the biggest quote unquote winner of day 1 or day 3, whatever you want to call it, of OTAs, and that could have like a pretty darn big impact on this defense.
I love that. I don't want to go ahead, Miko.
I was gonna say I don't want to add too much gasoline to what you're saying, but like to me that is a little. That is like an extra notch in his belt because we typically know like OTAs is the time for the offense to shine because like you were saying before, there's limited contact. So in a lot of ways, practices are catered to the offense to succeed, but to hear that he is standing out against, again, a top 5 receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown, even on one specific play, like those are things that should have Lions fans, kind of gaining that extra giddiness, that extra excitement about how good this defense could be, come week 1.
And the way you think about that too, I love that Jeremy made that point because AG and Campbell would talk about it this way. If you are sticky and you don't give up some of that short stuff and you get into more 3rd and longs, more favorable downs and distances, that's how you create turnovers and explosives on defense because you're getting in obvious pass downs where you can have Hutch pin his ears back and you can run stunts in games and you can send Brian Branch off the edge or Melifonwu. So that's I really, that gets me excited, because if you're a man team and you can be sticky on the outside, like Jeremy's saying, you can get into a lot of third downs and you can make life tough for quarterbacks. Um, Staying on the defensive side of the ball, Jack Campbell got a lot of praise today. So that's like, what does that mean? Because like, I want to see what that looks like, because if you can't keep Campbell off the field, like I think you keep Anzalone at the will and Campbell starts eating maybe the lion's share at the mic. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what Aaron Glenn called him, is like that dude is a pure Mike linebacker, which is something really we didn't hear last year too much, because they moved him all around, right? Like they were just trying to figure out his spot. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think we all knew that was eventually where he was going to land, and that was their long-term plans for him. But it seems like that might be a sooner rather than later thing. Now, of course, no Alex Anzalone today. Derek Barnes didn't take part in most of the team drills, so it was mostly Jack Campbell, and I think Malcolm Rodriguez was out there mostly with the ones. So in terms of how he played, it was up and down. Like one time he drew Amon-Ra St. Brown, and what you would expect happened. He kind of got turned around, lost a step or two on him, but and then, later, early on, he was lined up against the tight end, and I think the tight end caught it, but he was right there, stopped it for a minimal gain. Hard to really evaluate run fits when no one is tackling, so I don't have a lot for you there. But again, like going back to the press conferences, you're right. Like Jack Campbell was a guy who heard a lot of praise. I talked to him after practice, and he's talking about the game slowing down. He's talking about how now he's starting to notice mistakes on other players, whereas last year, like, he's so hyper focused on himself and overthinking everything. And if you've talked to Jack Campbell or even seen one of his press conferences, that guy is so hard on himself that sometimes it was hard for him to see the bigger picture. And now he's saying, like, instead of just focusing on the front seven, now I'm starting to learn the back end of the defense a little bit so I can see how it all works together. And like, that's huge for a Mike linebacker, right? You have to know what everyone around you is doing. And so now that, Dan Campbell refers to it as like, okay, now we're in 401. This year they're in 401. Jack Campbell's now in 201 in his second year. And you can start to see some of the wheels turn about learning the entirety of the defense, and the fact that he's just like being able to navigate and identify mistakes that he's making, that other players are making, to me just shows like mentally he is where he needs to be. And that's all you can ask for at this point in the offseason.
Yeah, and that's exactly where that's the things that I would like to hear about Jack, right? I think going into last season, his rookie year, I was very confident that he could physically play the position. But like you're saying, when it comes to middle linebacker, it is such a mental position. And then on top of the fact that he's juggling so many other responsibilities because they were trying to just figure out how, other ways of getting him on the field. This is ideally the perfect spot for him. And I think it's going to be interesting once, we get into training camp and they start putting on pads, how things kind of shake up. Obviously, last year, we saw the resurgence of Derek Barnes, and that kind of maybe helped Jack in a lot of ways, that he wasn't just thrown to the wolves in that sense. But I think this year we're going to see a much more intense battle probably between the two of them on who gets to get more of those starting reps.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think at the end of the day, whether it's Barnes or Campbell taking like a little bit of a backseat, if you will, at the mic, I feel like they'll find other ways to get them on the field, whether it's certain packages or personnel or what have you. Okay, other than the Jameson quote from Dan Campbell, was there anything else that really like stood out to you during Campbell's media availability?
It's a good question. Obviously he was asked a lot about, I think the Super Bowl quote is the one that's really been circulating, which kind of being misinterpreted a little bit. Like, he's asked, is this team, Super Bowl or bust? And he's like, I don't even know what bust means. And some people are like, oh, so you're guaranteeing a Super Bowl? It's like, no, that's not what he was saying. But yeah, it's all of that. It's the expectation. It's the expectation of growth, right? Which, they're obviously aiming for a Super Bowl, but to me, there's just like, this team is so set in its identity in a way that I haven't ever been accustomed to, where it's just like, they know who they are. There's so much continuity around that. They know what they expect their offensive identity to do. They know what their defensive identity is, and to me, it's just it's very interesting to have such a settled franchise that because when you think of like franchises that have identities, you think of like these, the Steelers are a great defensive team. The Packers have always had really good quarterback play. The Chiefs are this, inventive franchise, and the Lions have never had an identity other than losing. And now just like to have this sort of like, we know this is a gritty football team. We know what they want to do on offense, run the ball. We know they want to dominate both sides of the line. We know now that they want to be a man team and blitz a lot. And so to have this set identity, and to me, like, not run from it either, because I think a lot of times you'll see these teams that are just like, we don't want to tell you what we are. We're a secret. We're hiding. Like the Lions are like, this is what we're going to do. Come stop us. Try.
And I feel like that's been Dan Campbell and this coaching staff from day one, right? Like
ever
since his opening press conference, where it's like, no, we're that team. I think it was during Hard Knocks where he talked about like, no, we're going to be at your front door, like basically ready to punch you in the face. Like you're not going to have to come find us. You're not going to have to wonder what this team is going to be. It's very transparent. It's very much, there's some trickery. Ben Johnson is still, the Wizard of Oz of the NFL in terms of being able to just come up with just crazy things that catches, opposing defenses off guard. But at their core, to your point, Jeremy, this team is who they're going to be, and they just dare you to try to stop it.
I love the confidence of that. I guess maybe that's what I'm feeling too. And again, I wrote a little bit about this because like last year we started to see the confidence creep in, right? I think a lot of it was pushed by CJ Gardner-Johnson, right? He's got this new sort of swagger, and it's spreading to Kirby Joseph. It's spreading to this guy. Now it just feels like that's everybody. It's like, we know who we are. We got, Carlton Davis saying like, I'm going to shut down number one receivers. You've got, Aiden Hutchinson. Apparently I didn't even see it. Apparently he did the gritty today after getting a PBU. Like everyone is just like on it on a certain level, and it's not, they don't need this like one rallying cry like maybe they did last year with CJ Gardner-Johnson. It's just pervasive through the offense, through the defense, because again, I think they just have this set identity of like, we know who we are, so now we can just play freely.
And Carlton Davis too, like it was interesting during his media availability. He said he hadn't really felt like this, like from a talent perspective, since the 2020 team where they won a Super Bowl. Right. So that was pretty cool to hear. What were you going to say, Miko?
No, I was gonna say like that's the thing that I think is again another sign of this team just growing. And I think whenever like these questions come up to either Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes about like, okay, well, where are you in your timeline and like how far? And it's like, this makes it easy to believe they're exactly where they're supposed to be. And it's the talent matches the confidence, and the talent and confidence, at least as far as like the last couple seasons, has produced wins. And so there's that element of it. And obviously it's football, right? Things happen any given Sunday. It's a physical sport. There's so many other variables that can't be accounted for right now in May. But at least these are the types of things that I think you want to hear about a football team that again won the division last year and won 2 playoff games last year.
No question.
One thing I did want to ask is obviously there was like you mentioned at the top of this video, right? Lots of injuries or not even just injuries, but guys just being held out of practice or being limited. Yeah. 2 of those guys being part of this Lions future in Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr. How much concern do you have of again, them being kind of held out of this practice? Do you think that's just, again, trying to take things easy with them both? Or do you think that, something may be bothering one or both of them a little more than we know?
No, I think it's both minor. I think something crept up on Terrion, it sounded like, with Dan Campbell, and they've been kind of like working his way up this week. He did individual drills, he did walk through, and I don't think I saw him out there on any team drills, 11-11 or 7-on-7s. But I think he's trending in the right direction. With Rakestraw, I think that was more of like a planned thing from the beginning. He had core surgery this offseason. He's been dealing with something on and off pretty much all of last college football season. So I think they're just like, let's take it easy here. We're not even sure you're going to be starting, so let's not overburden your body right now. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any real cause for concern there. But, the Lions just do this with injury. I think more so than any of the regimes in the past. Like I view it as a way of like they care about their players. Like obviously,
Yeah.
it's a selfish reason too. Like they want these guys at their best when it matters during the season. But we've always seen them take it kind of slow with these guys. And sometimes that does mean missing more games than maybe you would with a different franchise. And so I get why people don't love seeing that, especially when it's your first and second round pick and maybe your only 2 picks that you're expecting to make a significant impact on offense or defense this year. But it's smart. Again, as they keep reiterating, and I want to kind of reiterate too, like this time of year is more about the mental than it is the physical anyways. So get your body right for training camp. And that's when you're really going to want to go through all the physical drills, because other than that, it's not matter. And they're going through the mental reps right now anyways. So they're getting mostly of what they need to anyways. They're out there on the field. They're bouncing ideas off Carlton Davis and Aaron Glenn. So they're really getting all of the mental part of what they need to right now, and no need to push anything else at this point.
Exactly. It's a teaching environment, and it's like you nailed it, Jeremy. Like they're going to get to learn, and we'd rather them be safe, guys. It's May, Look at the
Absolutely.
Dan Campbell made that Rams joke for a reason. That was hilarious. That made me laugh, actually. I was like, okay.
Everyone's either going to be on the pup, doubtful, or probable for week 1. Great. Okay, thanks, Dan.
he kept his face straight for like a little bit. Then he's like, good. Glad we got that out of the way. I was dreading that. Like I was like, all right, this man has a sense. Like that's what I'm saying, man. Then you have Mina Kimes retweeting like she just figured out that he is the 2 teacup Yorkies as this like 6'5", 250 pound like cowboy from Texas, if you will, like West Texas, wherever the hell he's from. But yeah, man,
is she gonna move him up on her head coach list?
Yeah,
got to be 2 spots for 2 Yorkies.
Just above LaFleur, at least, man. That was the only one I really had an issue with. I just don't. I was like, he's like LaFleur is 2-4 against Dan Campbell. Do you guys know that?
I guess
Dan Campbell's 4-2, or however you want to phrase it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dan Campbell's 4-2. Matt LaFleur is 2-4. So
that's just math.
I really don't. What are we doing, Mina? You're very smart. Come on.
Well, Jeremy, we appreciate you coming on. Morgan, I don't have any other questions. If you got anything else that you want to throw Jeremy's way before we all kind of call it a night here.
No, I don't, and I apologize for the listeners hearing my dog bark.
I think that's our walk-off song of like, hey, wrap it up.
This man won't stop barking. But yeah, no, it was good. Thanks for coming on, Jeremy. Excited to do more of these as things ramp up. But yeah,
no problem.
Fun season, man.
And if this wasn't enough for people, head over to Pride of Detroit, go read my full observations. I get much more detailed into who was playing where, that whole table setting thing I was talking about. I pretty thoroughly lay out who was first team, second team, third team at certain positions, and throw in a couple extra observations in there too from the actual play.
Definitely
there's actually some special team stuff in there.
Yeah, situational stuff. Go get it.
They don't allow me to do too much special team stuff. They're very secretive of their kickoff stuff. Although I will say, Dave Phipps said some really interesting things about kind of their strategy, what they're thinking about with the new kickoff. So go watch that press conference and come back to me. We'll talk some special teams next time.
Yeah.
Well, once again, Jeremy, we appreciate you taking the time to come on here, hang out with us. And like Jeremy said, go out, check out his full observation article. I will make sure that is linked in the description of this video. So if you've made it to this point, go to the description, go read Jeremy's article. If you've already read it, read it again. And if you've read it twice already, send it to somebody else so they can now read it twice. We really do appreciate all of that support of you guys, again, supporting the website, supporting us over here on the Project Detroit YouTube channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. We're on the road to 20,000 at this point. We have 13,000 subscribers. So
dang.
Let's see if we can get to 20,000 before the season starts. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. He's Jeremy. Thank you guys for taking so much time to come out and watch us. And we will see you guys in the next one.